Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody that's here in person and all the people that are on Zoom. I want to inform the people that are on Zoom, if you have questions, you're going to be muted during this, but if you have a question, if you go up to the dialog box, you can send a question through chat, and we will answer those the best that we can. As a board, we're really excited that you all have decided to run for office. We like to make sure that all of you have a positive experience, that you get on the ballot successfully, that you don't stub your toe over some little nuance of election law that you may never have paid attention to before, may never will again. So it's our goal that you get on the ballot and that let the voters decide whether you get your office or not. We started these a couple years ago, and it has been very successful. We had a really bad year where we had to disqualify a number of candidates from the ballot, and so we hired a consulting company and created the candidate portal on our website. And so filling out your petition is similar to ordering something on Amazon or Kohl's or whatever. It won't let you go forward until all the blanks are filled in properly and all the boxes are checked, so that you're sure that when your petition comes out of the printer, it's proper. All the blanks are filled in, and we won't have any problems, and you'll be on the ballot. To start us off today, I'd like to introduce the board and our staff. Over here to my left is Sean Stevens. Next to him is Peg Watkins. And next to her is Steve Cutler. And they'll each be getting up here during this presentation and saying a few words as well. I'm as proud as anybody to introduce our staff. I'm like an uncle that is proud of his family. And I'd like to introduce our staff that keeps everything running as smoothly as it does. First of all, our director is Carla Heron. Anthony Sadie is our deputy director. Over here on the right side is John Helwig. Wave your hand, John. Barb Berry and Umar King. In the back is Marilyn Van Giesen, Ali Solov, and Carol Young. And over here on the left side is Jeremy Austin, Shirley Benahoof, Ginny Weist, and Rob Katula. Oh, hi, Indu. And Indu's in the back. So all of these people are at your disposal. If you ever have a question about any aspect of this, whether it's a question about campaign finance or your petition or anything else, just give the office a call. We are more than glad to help you. It's what we're here for. We're proud of the job that we do. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Sean Stevens, who will introduce our elected officials who are here today and a video from the Secretary of State.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you, everybody, for coming today. I have the very distinct pleasure of introducing some of the folks that are here today who are elected officials. Before I do that, I want to reiterate what Ed said about how cool it is that you all have decided to spend time learning more about running for office and coming to this class. Our team put a lot of time and effort into it. I would just encourage you, there's no question too small, insignificant. As you're learning about running for office, if there's a form or a question that you have, please pick up the phone. We literally have teams of people in this office that all they do all day long is answer questions just like the ones that you're going to come up against. So please feel free to call the office with anything. So with that said, the folks on the Zoom call, we have some elected officials here with us in person and some on the Zoom call. I would ask that maybe you help me, for the people on the Zoom call, if you would clap when I announce these folks. It'll make us sound like a stadium full of people cheering on our elected officials. So I first would like to start with Chris Bauserman, our county engineer. Chris? Cindy DeNovo is here. She's our municipal clerk of court. Dave Martin, Sunbury, is it still village or city yet?
Still village.
All right, Sunbury Village Council. Very close. Thank you, Dave. Ryan Rivers was going to join us in person. I don't see him. Oh, he's on Zoom. Okay, Ryan, how you doing, buddy? Then on the Zoom call, we have, and this is going to be a little harder to clap online, but we'll clap for you here. Connie Goodman, Genoa Township trustee. Connie Skinner, Brown Township trustee. Corey Hoffman, Delaware City Council. Damon Capel, Sunbury Village Council. David Lockhart, Ashley Village Council. And Melissa Riggins, who is the Powell City Council. Thanks again, everybody. And then before I sit down, which you can clap if you want me to sit down, I just wanted to say thank you and introduce our Secretary of State Liaison, Susie O'Brien, who's sitting in the back. Thank you, Susie. Welcome. And now I'm going to ask that we have a special message from Secretary of State Frank LaRose. Thank you, everybody.
Hi there, my name is Frank LaRose, and I serve as the 51st Ohio Secretary of State. Now, first and foremost, thank you for exploring the opportunity to run for public office. The fact that you are participating in this candidate training tells me that you are looking at the opportunity to serve. This is truly an honorable calling. I hope that you pursue it. We need good men and women on both sides of the aisle to seek the chance to serve our community. And so I know that by attending this candidate school that you're attending right now, you're going to learn a lot of great things. And I hope that you pay attention and that you get a lot out of it. I sat in your seat just over a decade ago when in 2009 I attended candidate training. I also want to thank the Delaware County Board of Elections, truly one of the well-run boards in Ohio, and really we've got 88 county boards of elections that work very hard to try to deliver the kind of fair and accessible elections that Ohioans deserve. Truly, Ohio has become a leader in the nation in elections, and it's because of the bipartisan work done at 88 county boards of elections. Again, public service is an honorable calling. I hope that you continue to pursue it and have fun out there on the campaign trail. Really, the act of running for office is all about exchanging ideas, meeting members of our community, and talking about how we're going to make our state and our communities and our nation stronger. And so enjoy your time out on the campaign trail, and good luck.
When I was introducing staff earlier, we have a new fellow on our staff, and he snuck in there in the back, Corey McCaffrey. Corey, could you raise your hand? Hold on, I got to get one more paper. You know, there's, living in the times we do, in the country we do, there's a lot of things we don't think about. It just never crosses our mind that we grab a bottle of water and we drink it, and we don't worry if it's pure or not. We buy food at the grocery store, and we don't have to worry about whether it's rotten or not. And when you drive down the road or cross a bridge, we don't have to be concerned about whether we will get there safely. It's just something that doesn't cross our mind. It's an expectation, but I can guarantee you it keeps Chris Bauserman up at night to make sure that our roadways are safe and our bridges are safe. Chris graduated from Ohio Northern and came to work for a Delaware County engineer in he served as an assistant engineer for 7 years and became the engineer in 1996. He has been the past president of both the National Association of County Engineers and the County Engineers Association. And when Chris first started with the engineer's office, there was only 60,000 people in Delaware County. And we think we'll tap out somewhere between 215 and 218,000 people after this census. More people, more houses, more roads and neighborhoods. And so what used to be a little township road now has hundreds of people driving over it each day. County roads have thousands of people. And I live down in Genoa Township, and when I drove up through Big Walnut and Old State and Peach Blow, I saw 6 or 8 new developments going in where they're clearing brush and trees and moving dirt around. It just doesn't end. And that's why we're glad to have Chris as our engineer. He's the one that keeps the traffic moving in a roundabout way. See what I did there? Okay. So, it's hard to make a joke about an engineer. They don't make action shows about engineers. So at this point, I'd like to introduce you all to Chris Bowser.
Yeah, thanks for trying to make a joke about engineers. We have legendary sense of humor as engineers. Just ask my wife. The part that was not in my introduction was that I'm most importantly married 36 years to my wife Sherry, who's an elementary school teacher. I have 3 children and three grandchildren, and I'll stop there because, like most grandparents, I could talk for the next half an hour about my grandkids. But to chime in on something that Ed pointed out in terms of how much things have changed in our county over the years. When I started with the county engineer's office, one of the things we were doing were taking traffic counts on our road. South Old State Road in Orange Township, there was no Polaris interchange on 71 at that point. And there were just a little over 1,000 cars a day on South Old State Road. The traffic count we did 2 years ago with the project there had over 20,000 cars a day on South Old State Road. So things have changed dramatically, and it's easy to lose track of how things really used to be. Thanks so much to the board for inviting me to share this time. I thought back to 2 years ago. I attended this session as a candidate, and Roger Van Sickle, longtime township trustee, was the speaker, and the candidate school before that was John Peterson, I believe, who spoke, who I have intimate respect for as both a local county official and a state legislator, and so the fact that I've been asked to do something that those 2 individuals be mentioned in the same breath with them is an honor, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Thanks for being here. For those of you online and in the room, thanks for your attention. And I just want to share a few thoughts with you. I'm kind of an unlikely choice, really, for this candidate school issue, if you want to know about how to run an election, because I've been on the ballot 7 times. I've been successful 7 times, and my best advice to you is, if given a choice, run unopposed. It really dramatically increases your chances of a successful election if you do that. Though I haven't stood the test of a new person election, I have helped other candidates run elections. I've chaired an issue election that was on the ballot in 1998, and so I have some experience, but really I have more experience being a public official than I do being a candidate. And so most of what I'm going to talk to you about are my thoughts about holding public office, and just some observations that I've made over the years. You're here today because you're somebody. I'm not saying that to boost your self-esteem or to make you feel good about yourself, but how many times have we heard people say, somebody ought to do something about that? A lot of people think it, some people verbalize it, I hear it. You, by choosing to put your name on the ballot, by seeking public office, are somebody. You're the somebody that people will expect to fix the problem, address the issue that they have. And so thanks for taking that bold step. It's not an easy thing to put your name on the ballot for your friends and neighbors and the people who know you, to make a decision about whether you're worthy to hold public office. It takes some courage to do that. So thank you for being willing to step up and do that. Before I came to work for the county, I worked in the private sector. I got to work on some really interesting projects. I was involved with the design and construction of the first automobile plant that Honda built in Union County in Marysville. I got to build the proving grounds for military vehicle manufacture. I got to build a golf course and design subdivision developments. All that was a lot of fun, but I can tell you my time in public service to Delaware County is the most gratifying, most enjoyable, the most rewarding thing in my professional career. I've had a chance to work with a number of county commissioners, other county elected officials, city council people, mayors, trustees, fiscal officers, state representatives, state senators, congressmen, U.S. senators, and I've observed a lot in all that in my 32 years of public service. I've learned a little bit, and so that's kind of what I want to share with you, are some of the observations that I've made about, that I've learned about public service from those folks. First thing, I think, and most importantly, is to understand what the laws are that govern the office that you're going to hold and govern the agency that you're going to hold. We don't get to make the rules as public servants, unless, of course, you're a congressman or a state representative. You get to deliberate on how laws should be changed. But most of us at the local level have to take the laws that are handed to us, and it's particularly true in county government and the Ohio Revised Code. If the law says you can do it, you can't. If it's silent or says you can't, then you can't. And so it's important to understand that, because there will be people that ask you to do things that you aren't empowered to do, that you aren't authorized to do. You need to understand what the limitations are of your office. There'll also be things in the law that'll compel you to do that you wouldn't do if it were your choice. But you'll take an oath of office that says you will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Ohio, and so you're bound by the oath you take of office and the expectation to uphold those laws. And so it's important to understand what latitude you have in carrying out your duties and what you're bound by. It's also important to understand that the success that you have will come from the relationships that you build with others. Very few elected officials have the ability or the opportunity to make a difference by themselves, to do things single-handedly to affect change or to solve problems. It really takes a group of people that are like-minded, who respect one another and work well together, regardless of party affiliation, to make things happen. And so I work with individuals at the village level. I've worked with Dave Martin as a township trustee and a village person at the soon-to-be city of Sunbury, right, when the census comes out. And I've worked with townships, and I work with the state of Ohio. Very few of the projects that I do in my office are standalone county projects. They almost all have some interaction with some other agency, either from a funding standpoint or a jurisdictional standpoint. And you can't do that if everybody's not of a like mind and thinks that we need to move forward on this project or this initiative or make these changes. And so your ability to be successful will hinge largely on your ability to build relationships with other people in both the public and private sector. You also will need to learn how to find common ground when there's confrontation and disagreement, because that comes with the territory, it seems like, in holding public office and when public agencies are involved. So having a solid working relationship with people lets you build consensus. It lets you find common ground. One of the things I've learned is that the public really doesn't draw a distinction between the county government and township government and municipal government and state government. They got a problem and they call you. They expect you to solve the problem. It's not satisfying for them to hear me say, well, that's a township issue. You need to call the township. Or that's a state of Ohio issue. Their expectation is, I'm talking to the government, I expect the government to solve that. So by building relationships with these other agencies, it's easy to help people do that and get their problems solved or addressed or at least heard if you have those kind of relationships with other agencies. I think it's also important that when you take office that we focus on goals, things we want to accomplish rather than agendas. There are a lot of people we can recognize over the years who have been elected because they have some burr under their saddle. They have some issue that upset them, and they decide they're going to run for office and get that issue taken care of. Those kind of agendas really don't settle well. They don't work well in terms of governing. And so there's nothing wrong with having a goal of addressing that issue, but I'd encourage you to focus on goals, but not on personal agendas as you take office. One of the big ones is that you need to be comfortable with the fact that you're going to be faced with difficult decisions. Many of the decisions that you make will be routine and mundane, like approving the payroll, approving the power bill to keep the lights on in the office, doing rather routine things that happen on a monthly basis or a weekly basis. But some of the decisions that you make will have really long-lasting impacts on your community. When those difficult decisions come up, conflict is inevitable. And so there'll be people that, regardless of where we are on some of the decisions we make, who aren't happy, whichever way you decide. Very few decisions that you face are going to make everybody happy. We do projects all over the county that are designed to keep traffic moving. And when we do that, that usually means we need more land. The footprint of the road needs to be bigger. We need to purchase land from adjacent property owners. And you can imagine some of them aren't very happy about a road getting closer to the front of their house. I wouldn't be either. I can't expect them to be. But we also have this other side of the decision that there is a greater good there that serves the community. So we have to make decisions about how we handle those things. There are a number of different examples well beyond the road project issue. It's just one that I'm familiar with that you'll be faced with in your public office. So with that, you just need to understand that you're going to be faced with decisions that people aren't going to be happy about. There's going to be a group that doesn't like what you have to say. And I'm sorry to say that there'll be some people who are rude, condescending, downright mean. There's some people that can really approach these problems in that way. We can't control how they react to what it is we want to do, but we can control how we react to their criticism and what they say to us. So that's an important thing. When we receive criticism, we need to listen to it. We need to consider what it is that they're saying, and we also need to not dwell on it and not personalize it. We need to listen when people are talking to us. Sometimes their actions or their manner overshadows what it is that they're trying to say to us, and so you have to learn to try to sort out what's really at the root. Why are they really upset? And get past the fact that they're in your face, they're being rude and disrespectful, and try to find what it is they're really trying to say. And I'd encourage you to be respectful even when they aren't being respectful to you. Keep your dignity even when others don't. Resist the temptation to treat them or mistreat them the way they are you. I've occasionally not listened to my own advice in this regard. So over the course of a lot of public meetings, there have been times when faced with that kind of confrontation that I've responded a few times in a way that I wish I hadn't. I'll share with you that it rarely feels as good as you think it's going to when you do that. It always undermines your credibility, and it always clouds the message you're trying to get to them. What they'll remember is how you responded to them, not what it is you were trying to say. So I've learned that, hopefully I've learned, that the view is always much better when you take the high road. It's an important time to talk about social media. When I started, there was no such thing. And in the last 10 years, the way that's changed, the way people interact with government and interact with each other, has been will probably go down as one of the big societal changes in our lifetime, if not larger than that. It's a dramatic shift in the way people act and react to one another. I think we have to acknowledge the importance of social media and the tool that it is, embrace it and use it. We have a Facebook page and Twitter account. We communicate with people about projects, even though we know that snide comments are going to come back when we do. But not all of those are. But we also we have to keep it in perspective that 200 postings on a Facebook page, 200 likes, 200 retweets doesn't necessarily represent a broad cross-section of opinion on a number of the issues that we face. And so it's important to acknowledge it, listen to it, read it, digest it, but don't obsess over it and don't overvalue what it means in the whole picture of people. There's a lot of people that don't use that platform to express how they feel about things. And so I think we have to measure that and not overcalculate the magnitude of that sentiment. A lot of the decisions that we make have really long-term impacts. I mentioned that earlier, and I was thinking about how some of those bigger decisions shape the communities that we serve, the communities that you serve or will serve if you're elected. And I got to thinking about in our county in the past, some of the big decisions that were made and how that's changed the county as we know it today. Think about Delaware County before there were 5 reservoirs, before there was an interstate highway with 2 interchanges, and the decision that was made to only have 2 interchanges. I wish we could go back and do that over and say, well, there ought to be a couple more interchanges on I-71. Think about the decisions to make, to build sewer lines and water lines, and how that opened ground up for development and improved the health of our county and our community. How major zoning decisions were made years ago, and how a lot of the townships and cities are still faced with big zoning decisions even today, and how that changes the landscape in a really significant way. I thought about school districts. There are still people, I don't know if anybody in the room that would remember this, but there are still people around in the county that I hear from who remember back to the days when there was a high school in Bell Point, in Ostrander, in Ashley, in Radnor, and Galena, and Sunbury each had their own high school. Center Village, and you go all around the county to the Bergs, Powell, and Hyatts, and they all have their own schools. Decision was made somewhere along the line to consolidate school districts and to combine those. And I'd argue that the single biggest draw to development in Delaware County today is the quality of our school districts. And there are a number of factors, but I think the biggest one is the quality of our school districts, and that decision to consolidate school districts and where to draw boundaries and where to concentrate capital and investment had a huge change in impact in the county as we know it today. And so there's all these kind of decisions that seemed important to the people who made those decisions at the time, but I hope that they were not just thinking about the people in the room who were angry that their high school was going to go away, and their kids were going to have to drive another 20 minutes to get to school, and thought they were thinking beyond that immediate challenge to something bigger. Those are the kind of things that you'll be faced with, and I hope you consider both the immediate and the long-term decisions when you do that. My grandfather worked in a stone quarry and farmed in southeastern Ohio. He lived there his whole life. He was proud to have a grandson who was an engineer who was going to make his living with his mind instead of his back. And when he heard that I was going to run for county engineer, my mom told him that, and he told my mom, he said, "I hate to see Chris get mixed up in politics." And like many folks today, he had very little regard for government, and he didn't like politicians. Not long after that, he and my grandmother sent me a birthday card that had a clipping out of Reader's Digest. Reader's Digest used to have a notable quotes page, and so they clipped out this page of Reader's Digest with a clipping on the quote, with a quote from James Freeman Clarke, who said, "A politician thinks of the next election, and a statesman thinks of the next generation." And at the bottom were the words, "Be a statesman." So I remembered that. I think it's appropriate in our discussion today. I understand that the type of offices that you hold in this group will be varied. You know, some of you are maybe looking at state office, some of it at local government, some of it, you know, down to school boards and everything in between. But this gift of public trust that comes with holding public office is really special. And if you're entrusted with that responsibility to hold public office, I hope you'll treat it like a treasure and with the dignity that it deserves. I'd like to share a story with you that you'll wonder as I get going, where in the world is Chris going with this? But I hope at the end it'll make some sense to you. When I was 10 years old, my family and I, my brother and I and my parents went to southeastern West Virginia and rented a cabin in the mountains. And what you need to know about my parents is that wherever you were on Sunday morning, you needed to be in church and Sunday school. And so I didn't mind that growing up. I grew up with it. I hated it when we were traveling. I hated to go into a new church. I hated to go into a Sunday school class where I didn't know anybody. But in Hillsborough, West Virginia, Sunday morning, we found ourselves in a new church, and the teacher in my Sunday school class was a woman named Madeline Hill. And when Sunday school was over, my parents came by the room to pick us up. She invited us to have lunch with she and her husband after church. So my parents took her up on that offer. We followed Johnny and Madeline up a mountain, back a country road. The road got narrow and narrow. It went by a state park which is the site of Droop Mountain, the Battle of Droop Mountain in the Civil War. So the Droop Mountain battlefield, and on to their little farm that was perched on the side of the mountain. Not a flat place on it, pretty modest place, well kept, but hard to see how anybody eked out a living on this little mountain farm. And Madeline fixed us lunch in a kitchen that was detached from the house. So she had to walk outside to the kitchen, brought food to us in the dining room in the house. And after we ate, Madeline said, Johnny, why don't you go show the boys your treasure? And so we went in the living room of this house, and he went to the closet, brought out a box, took out an object that was wrapped in a blanket, and inside was a drum that his great uncle had retrieved from Droop Mountain battlefield. Excuse me a second. The story was that his great uncle, after the battle, his parents sent he and his brothers to carry water up to soldiers after the battle. Excuse me. So the drum was a remarkable thing. I got to hold it. I got to think about what that meant, and the rest of the story is that Johnny and Madeline became some of my mom and dad's closest friends. So over the years, they came to Ohio to visit us, and we went back to visit them multiple times. Every time we were there, I wanted to see that drum, and we did. And the last time that my mom and dad went to see Johnny and Madeline, Johnny said, let's go up to the state park where the battlefield is. They opened a new museum up there. And when they got up to the museum, there behind the glass was the drum in a display case. Now, over the years, there was a governor in West Virginia named Rockefeller who collected Civil War artifacts. And he knew through someone that Johnny had this drum that came from a battlefield in West Virginia. And over the years, he'd offered Johnny a lot of money to buy the drum. And if you saw how Johnny and Madeline lived, the kind of money he was offering them could have changed their lives. But he never sold it. And so when my dad was standing there with him looking at that drum behind the display case, my dad said, "Did you ever wish you just sold that drum to Governor Rockefeller?" And he said, "No." He said, "It was never really mine in the first place." It was never really mine in the first place. That's how I feel about public office. Excuse me, you can tell I've got fond memories of Johnny and Madeline. But I hope you, if you hold public office, or if you do now, I hope you'll treat the public trust like that, like a treasure, with a lot of respect, and never use it to enrich yourself. But in a grand scheme of things, understand that you're just holding on to it for a short time. Holding public office is really a very strange combination. This ball of reward and difficulty, challenge, satisfaction, all wrapped up in this package. I'm really grateful that I've had the opportunity to hold public office in this great community. I've served alongside so many respected and effective public servants. I'm grateful for the opportunity to make an impact on the community that I love and call home. And whether you're running for election or you're considering running for the first time, re-election or for the first time, thanks for wanting to make a difference and for boldly putting yourself in the position to be somebody who did something about that. So thank you. And
At this time, I'd like to introduce my colleague on the board, Peg Watkins, who's going to explain part of this afternoon's agenda for us. Thank you, Peg.
Breathing. I want to echo what other people have said, that it is really a wonderful thing that you folks are considering running for office, and it is a brave thing to do, and we really appreciate it. We wish you all the success in the world, and that is the reason we put this together. We have the best Board of Elections staff and the best Board of Elections in the state of Ohio, at least, if not, the country. But today's agenda includes hearing from my colleague Steve Kuckler, another member of the board. He's going to talk about the road to success, why we're here today, our petition module and policies of our Board of Elections. Our director, Carla Herron, will talk about the supporting roles that happen here in the Board of Elections. You are going to learn more about elections, hopefully, than you currently know, and maybe more than you ever wanted to know. You'll learn about referendum procedures, protests to issues, and also when we have special elections, there are often chargebacks. So you'll be learning some new vocabulary from Carla. After that, we'll have some advice and answers from the board, and we will talk about our experiences in Delaware County. We are famous for having a number of lawsuits that involve the Board of Elections. So if you're studying elections law in the state of Ohio, Delaware County comes up quite a bit. Jeremy Austin will talk about petitions. We want you to complete your petitions correctly the first time. There are a number of rules to follow. That's why we built the module, to make it easier for you. We're not trying to trip you up by saying, oh, you didn't dot this I or cross that T. We want you to do it correctly the first time. It's not impossible, and we're here to support you in doing that. Also, in circulating your petitions to get an adequate number of signatures so that you can get your name put on the ballot. Director Anthony Sadie will talk about our website data and the tools that you can find there. The Board of Elections website is really a valuable resource for candidates and the general public, because there's a lot of information you can find there. There's a candidate portal. You can look at voter lists and absentee reports, and there's some historical resources. So for example, this year, if you want to see what happened in the election 4 years ago when the same offices were up, you can look at how the votes fell in your particular jurisdiction, whether it's Sunbury or the city of Delaware or any township in the county. Then Shirley Benahoof and Jenny Wiest will talk about campaign finance, which is not anybody's favorite topic, I think. But they'll talk to you about the committees that you form for your campaign, the reporting requirements, and they are here to help you. You will have questions about how to do this and what you must report, if you're reporting it correctly. Jenny and Shirley have phone numbers that they pick up the phone, they answer, they'll help you get through that so that when there's an audit, you're going to pass it. That's what we want. And then finally, we will have a question and answer at the end with any questions you have for any of us. And today's event also includes some one-on-one. So if anybody is ready to file their petition, we can get you started on that with the petition module. Okay. All right, I want to thank you all again for being here, and I'll introduce my colleague Steve Kuckler, who is here to entertain you with the way he talks about why we're here today.
Entertaining,
That's why you are. Yeah.
thanks. Well, good afternoon. Thank you, Peg. My name is Steve Kuckler. I'm proud to be a board member here. I'll be brief, right? Talking about the road to success. The board is here to help you with your road to success in terms of getting on the ballot and filing your campaign finance reports. Your ultimate road to success is what Mr. Bowserman said, which we should give another round of applause, quite possibly one of the greatest things I've ever heard. I'll back up. As an individual who has held local office before, I will say, after getting into office, the easy part was the campaign. It's all seriousness. The hard part is actually governing and running the office in a way that brings people together, achieves success, does things that are in the best interest long-term for the community. It's easy to get caught up into the short-term wins of what's up, what's down, but ultimately you're there in office to do what's in the best interest 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years from now. We can all look back and say, man, why is this thing the way it is today? It's probably because someone made a short-sighted decision 30 years ago. And we're living with the consequences of a short-sighted decision. The things we love most about where we live, things the way they are, whether it's in our county or state or our country, it's because of the decisions that were made with the long-term effects. So I just wanted to reiterate what Mr. Bosman was saying there. You're going to get all kinds of nitty-gritty nuts and bolts about our online portals, how to properly fill out petitions. Our experience in the past has been candidates did not fill out their petition of candidacy correctly. Either they forgot to put a date, they didn't sign it, they didn't have the proper number of signatures, the signatures they had were not valid for whatever reason. They either weren't registered voters or they were registered voters in another community. For example, if you're running in the great city, soon-to-be city of Sunbury, the shining city of Big Walnut, can't circulate that in POW, right? Those POW registered voters won't count on your petition in Sunbury. Now that seems, well, geez, Steve, that's pretty hokey, that's pretty basic. It happens a lot. It happens a lot. And so that's why all these tools that this team right here has put together over the years are ways to fix the problem, to make it easier. I guess you follow the rules, follow the processes, get online, fill out your petitions, you'll be fine. Where you won't be fine is when you deviate. A lot of the problems we have seen with candidate petitions is because people think they're smarter than the process. They're smarter than the Board of Elections. Well, I know the law. I'm a lawyer, or I'm a big shot, whatever, from Columbus. Well, if you follow this process, right? I'm an Army guy, right? We got a manual for everything, and we have a form for everything, right? Just follow the rules. step 1, step 2, step 3, you'll be fine. Where you start pontificating and getting caught up into what should be, what shouldn't be, what isn't, what is, then you will mess up your petitions. And we then are bound by our own oath to the Constitution of Ohio, the United States of Ohio, and to the laws of Ohio, and we will enforce the laws. And that's where Peg mentioned lawsuits. Most of those lawsuits are because we followed the law, and the people on the other side didn't, they like the law, but then don't like the way the law was applied to their situation, all right? So point is, boil it down. We've got a really easy step guide, 1, 2, 3 step guide that you can follow on our website. You can hear more about it today. I just encourage you, just follow the process. Don't overthink it. Don't over pontificate about it. Just follow the process that have laid out, and you'll be successful. I really do think it's important to note that this board, right, there are 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats, but when it comes to the business of this board, we are not partisan, right? We run this board in the best way possible for the voters and residents of Delaware County. And so, as I always tell people, if the 4 of us can work together, and we all got pretty strong political opinions, right? I'll let you all figure out who's who, right, later in your Zoom chat. But the point is you come together to get the job done, right? And that's ultimately what we do. So I'm proud to work with all 4 of these folks, and we got a great staff with Carla and Anthony, and all the other staff that's here today. So that's all I have to say. Just thank you for stepping up. I was talking to a trustee in a township this morning about how it's hard to find good candidates, right? Because I'll share this story with you. One of my mentors that I practiced law with was a guy named Buck Reinhardt, right? Now, as soon as I say that name, there's all kinds of crazy stories, if you were here in the 80s, that you'll remember. But Buck Reinhardt loved being mayor of Columbus, didn't want to do anything else. Because Mayor Columbus, like being a township trustee or a Delaware City Council person, whatever the position is, that's where government meets the road, right? Everything else at DC and Columbus at the State House, it's kind of apart, right? It's kind of nebulous, and we follow it, and there's hot button issues that get us all fired up on Facebook. But the reality is, it's local government that cleans the streets, that paves the roads, that picks up the trash, gets you the water, make sure when you flush your toilet, it goes somewhere, right? That's all local government. And that's what impacts people's lives, is local government. So, honored to be in front of all you guys, and wish you all best of luck in this year or future years. And together, we can continue to work, make Delaware County the best county in the country. Thank you very much. And I'd like to introduce Carla Herron, our director. Thank you.
This is one of the most exciting things I do, is working with candidates and elected officials. There's so many good things about my job, but I always get excited when it's time for candidate school. I wanted to say something. We get accolades and about the staff, but not enough is said about our board. We have great leaders, the Board of Elections here. Our board has clear vision. They have integrity, honesty, and clear focus. They help us as staff members reach our goals, and they take pride in our accomplishments. And I just want you to know that includes you. They want each and every one of you to be successful and successfully make it to the ballot, and then let the voters decide. That's always been their position. And so they've steered us in the direction, the clear direction, to say, if it's build a module with their support. If it's come up with policies, help put them together and we'll pass them. And so I just cannot thank them enough for their leadership and how they direct us as staff. I'm going to tell you a little bit about us as far as elections and election officials. The Ohio Secretary of State is the chief election officer, excuse me, the state of Ohio. He's the boss of our county board of elections, and he oversees all 88 county board of elections. Of course, Steve mentioned there's 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats on our board. And we take pride that people can't tell the Republicans and Democrats in our office. Our staff is equal staff, and we take pride that that's how we treat our people, and including candidates. Of course, the Secretary of State, you're probably thinking, well, there's 2 and 2. What if there's a tie vote? The Secretary of State is the 5th board member for all 88 counties. Our board is a quasi-judicial. They have a quasi-judicial role. And what that means is they reign over, and we're going to hear a little bit about it, that hearings, protest, there's reconsideration hearings. If you don't make it to the ballot as a candidate, you can always file for reconsideration if you think you have a reason or that you believe that their decision was incorrect. And then, of course, there's the director and deputy director. An interesting note is whichever party the director is, the chair of the board must be the opposite party. What guides us and what guides our board, we're creatures of statute. We work with, we read and study Title 35 of the Ohio Revised Code, also Chapter 5705. These are areas that we would encourage you, if you're someone that would like to read up on the law about what you're doing. Of course, there's other areas of the law depending on the elected official that you may become, your area. And the Secretary of State issues directives, which holds the weight of law. And again, those are up online. You can go to the Ohio Secretary of State's website and look at questions and issues module, our elected officials. It is, to me, it's interesting reading. I hate to sound like an election nerd, as they say, but it's fascinating reading, and we would encourage you to do that. Unfortunately, there is a lot of areas that are missing in election law, ambiguous or just, completely silent. And that's where lawsuits come into play. And I think there's attorneys that would actually relish in that and don't really want us to clarify it because, that's where the battlegrounds are, in elections. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the type of elections. I'm surprised how many people are unaware of some of the types of elections. But first, speaking of general election, I want everyone to know, as far as the elections in Delaware County, we had the highest percentage and voter turnout in ever the history of Delaware County in the presidential 2020. And but then, it encouraged me to look back and to see the turnout for general elections as a whole. And I thought you may be interested in a couple of these statistics. As I went back about 10 presidential elections, and in Delaware County, we averaged 80.24% turnout in a presidential general election. Now, that's far different from a governor's race. In a governor's general, I went back approximately 10, and we have an average turnout of 57.93. So to repeat that, 80% in a presidential and 58% in a governor's general. But then when we look at a turnout in the election that's coming up in an odd year, this year, the year that you're going to be on the ballot, and it's disappointing, but I want you to know the turnout, the average turnout in a general election in an odd year is 37%. 37% compared to 80 or 57. Then we look at primary elections or special elections. Primary elections, when we look at the turnout for primaries, and again, primaries are a never even year. For a presidential primary, a little over 40% in round numbers, and for a governor's race, about 25%. Special elections, it's even rougher. When you have a special election, we have one now. We started voting a week this past Friday for military and overseas. We open our vote center next Tuesday, and we begin mailing out ballots. But the average for a special election is just a little over 10%. You're going to be on the ballot this year, and I hope that you will be. What else could be on the ballot with you? Of course, other candidates, questions, issues, tax levies, bonds, referendums. Many people don't know at the Board of Elections that we also deal with local liquor options. It's really interesting because we do all the wet and dry research and history that goes back to Prohibition in 1933. And it's a fascinating stage to go through and part of our job that, we really enjoy doing. But when you wonder about candidates, in Delaware County, I counted up how many offices that file here in Delaware County, where we're the most populous. Doesn't count presidential, elections, governors, and all the state officials and everyone that's on the ballot. This is just people, offices where they walk into Delaware County and they file here. And there's 506 offices that file here in Delaware County. I thought that was really interesting. I had never done that before. Also, as far as how many candidates may file this year, I decided to pull the numbers from odd number years, and I've listed those up there. I don't need to go down and read them, but the average there, I would say, quickly looking at it, is about 175, 180 people will be filing this fall. And I know many of you already know, but this fall is when there's 2 township trustees that will be filing to run. Those are the offices up. Also city council, village council, school board, governing board. Also, many people don't know this, but there's a couple of villages that have, it's actually a board of trustees of public affairs. And I'm not sure how many people know that, because many times we don't have candidates to file for that office. If you live in a village that maybe has that office and you're interested in that, I would look into that. Used to be when you would run for, I've been doing this for quite a few years. In the early 2000s, I'm close to 20 years of doing this, and elections have changed so much for candidates. It used to be that you could gear up your candidacy and you would go campaigning, and there was election day voting for the most part. And there was absentee, which you had to have a reason. You had to be out of the county, or older. Now you actually have an election cycle that you will be campaigning potentially up to 6 weeks or 46 days. 46 days starting this fall, September 17th. We will send out our first set of ballots for military and overseas, and we're very proud that we're able to get a ballot together and send to our military folks. And I've, as always, thanks to Steve, for serving our country in the Army reserves. But then again, you got to look at, if you're looking at walking around with your petition and you can register people, the filing deadline is October the 4th. And then we start voting. We open the vote center and we start mailing out ballots on October 5th this year. So again, those are the people that you want to reach, but it happens early. It happens early. And to give you just a few statistics, it used to be, if we went back in 2008, we had a very small percentage of people that voted absentee. But in the fall of 2020, we had 67, a little over 67% of the folks had voted prior to Election Day. So that's something to consider. We're going to give you tools as far as reaching the people in your area, but it's a whole different type of voting this day and age. And of course, Election Day voting, as always, 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Also, in-person absentee voting. As you walk around, you collect signatures. People ask you, well, when does the vote center open? We just want you to know we always put those on the website. And there's many hours. There's about 225 hours that we're open here. That includes evenings and weekends. I was trying to think as far as, how I could help you, because we can't help you with your campaign per se, but we're going to talk to you about campaign finance and how to fill out petitions and things. But I thought many times once you're on the ballot, candidates don't really know what happens. Of course, on election night, many times in close races, we no longer know who's the winner and who's the loser on election night. So we encourage you to look at the results. Of course, we have a live stream here in this room. You can always come here and watch the results. We put them up on the screen, but also you can go to the website. But just remember, on election night, that's an unofficial result. More and more, as I talked about, the more people that do absentee by mail, there's more and more outstanding ballots that come in after Election Day. They can come in up to 10 days after election, as long as they're postmarked the day before. So just think of that. But then what happens? You want to know, you can come to our meetings when we do our official canvas. Of course, we post that on the website, or as soon as our board has certified the results of the official canvas, we put it up on the website immediately. And then our board signs off on a certificate of election, and we will mail that to you. And of course, if you want to pick it up, you're welcome to come in and pick it up. But what happens if it is the official canvas and there's a tie vote? And many times in close races, in a tie vote, I talked about we work under the statutes, and it actually says in a tie vote, it has to be decided by lot, and that will be done at the official canvas. And so we've had several tie votes, and of course, we have a great board and a very creative board. I think it was Steve Kuckler that said, "What, you did a flip of a coin the last time. We are Delaware County. We're going to do something different." And in honor of the little brown jug, he said, "Carla, hey, tomorrow, why don't we get two horseshoes, a white one and a black one, and we'll just pull and we'll decide the winner from that." Well, I work at the Board of Elections. I just mentioned I've done this for a long time. I don't ride horses. I don't have a horse. I was thinking, where do I find, horseshoe in Delaware County, and the official canvas is tomorrow. But luckily we knew someone who knew someone who knew someone who got a horseshoes and got them into us. And of course we have a very resourceful staff, and we ran out and bought white paint and black paint. But so just remember, it is close races. Every vote counts here, and we take very, very much pride. And to prove our work, we are required to do a recount if it's within 0.5%. And we open our doors. There's something that our board members taught me, and I know Ed Helvey's one that we worked together now for quite a few years. And he pulled me aside when I first came to work. I'm kind of like Chris. I get emotional because I care so much about this job. But he said, just always be honest with us. Even if you make a mistake, even if you have a problem, you come to us and we will always have your back. We will work with you as a team. He said, but always be out front. Get ahead of any problem or anything that may happen in elections, and I'll always be open. And we've carried that through. I've taught that to people that work under me. The rest of the board members agree with that. And when we have a recount, we open our doors, and we've had many, many recounts. We encourage people to walk over. They stand next to our staff as they're counting. And as they're marking their ballots, we pull out our envelopes. And if they want to look at the signatures on those envelopes and check them themselves, we have a public computer. We encourage that. So, there's nothing more important to us than earning your trust and knowing that we do everything we can to count ballots properly. If you win, and I hope you all do, I know not everyone can win. I've mentioned what happens once we issue you the certificate of election. As I mentioned earlier, you'll get that in the mail. You take that with you. And I'm not really sure when or how you find out, but I know a judge from our Common Pleas Court will do a group swearing in for people in the local level. But of course, you can pick any judge to swear you in, or any office holder can swear you in, but you must take an oath before you would perform the first duties on the first day of your job. If you are an elected official, I was just going to touch a few things that we work with elected officials with, just to highlight a few. One, of course, is tax levies. And there's different types. I'm going to hit them briefly. If you're an elected official and you decide your township needs more money, if you do decide to put a tax levy on, an additional levy is actually new. It's a new levy. Also a renewal, just to hit the highlights, if you would put a renewal on the ballot, it would be for the same purpose and rate as the original issue. It has the same real property value, less taxes as you renew because it's from the old valuation. You can always also do a replacement, which again is the same purpose and rate, but it's the updated values, which would bring in more taxes at that point. There's many, many reasons. I will not bore you by going down each tie, but I think this is fascinating too. I'll give you just a moment to look over. There's so many reasons that you can apply taxes for your area and use the money for local. Many of these things, you just don't really stop and think about. And again, it's in your packet. I'll go ahead and advance. You as an elected official, it's not that complicated as far as what you have to do with our office, and we do everything we can to work with you. We have a great team. Our prosecutor's office, we worked with the prosecutor's office to come up with paperwork for local elected officials. It's going to put levies on the ballot, and it walks you through the steps. And it's also a form that you can just easily fill out. We're very proud of that, and we share it with all our local jurisdictions. And then filing, of course, there's a couple things I wanted to mention about this is when there's one new law that now if you file, it started this year in 2020 that you can actually file online. We have not experienced that as of yet, but of course, any levy is to be filed 90 days before an election by 4 p.m. And the interesting part of that is many times the filing deadline is the day after the preceding election. So, but I could explain that today. If you're an elected official and there is an election day, and you would put a levy on the ballot and will go down, and you want to go on the next election, the filing deadline is the day after, because our timelines are so long now that one election kind of goes on top of the other. So I hate to say it in this way, but I don't know how else to say it, is you would have to plan to fail. And have all your ducks in a row, because what our board's on, they may talk about this, but we did have an issue where we had two townships. They both, the levy did not pass in a November election. The filing deadline was the next day. And two of those townships did all of these steps, which is you have a resolution of necessity that you have to go to the county auditor and have them give you the numbers, the valuations. And then you go back and you have to have a second public meeting that has to be posted. And you then pass the resolution to go to the ballot with all the updated information. Some say that they drove up here with lights on right at 4 o'clock, but they did come racing to the door about 4 o'clock. And there was a lawsuit. One made it in by 4. The other was, I believe it was 4:02, 4:03, but 4:03. And our board, again, we talked about their creatures of statute. It says 4 o'clock. They said, no, you were late getting in. There was a hearing. It went to the Supreme Court. And I hate to say that it was, 4:03 was close enough for government, but the Supreme Court decided that it was close enough. I'm probably in trouble for saying that, so I apologize. You ask, what is our role if you would file something here at the Board of Elections? We accept the filing. Our board members are responsible to certify the ballot to the issue to the ballot. Excuse me. We prepare the ballot language. We also publish the issue in the newspaper, and we conduct the election, of course. But I wanted to mention, for issues, a majority affirmative vote is necessary for passage. So unlike the candidates, if it would end in a tie vote, the levy would go down if it resulted in a tie vote. And of course, we certify the results. And unless there is a challenge filed, as we just said. What else would we interact with you besides tax levies? Of course, there's municipal income tax. If you are city council or village council, anything in excess of 1% could go onto the ballot. That has to go onto the ballot, as a matter of fact. And you file here again. The filing deadline is 4 p.m. 90 days before an election. The other thing that we deal with township trustees quite a bit would be zoning referendums. That's something that is going on in a fast-growing county. That's something we see more and more. So the procedures for that, this is something that many people, when they come into office, if they're going to be a township trustee, doesn't really realize a couple of items. Is the township follows the procedures for the zoning amendment, and that's actually revised code 519.12. But an amendment becomes effective in 30 days unless a referendum is filed. And many people don't realize that the referendum's not filed with the Board of Elections. We get many calls and say, has the referendum been filed? The referendum is actually filed at the township level, filed with the township trustees. So what is the township trustees? They're required actually, and if you become a township trustee, you're required to look over facially whether that petition is valid on its face. And then you have to bring it to us within 2 weeks to the Board of Elections, but of course 90 days before an election. The Board of Township Trustees, we encourage to pass a resolution stating that they've reviewed the referendum petition and that they are certifying that it is valid on its face. And then, of course, they should provide that resolution with us when they come in and file the petition, because ultimately what happens is the clerk will come in and file with us. And of course, just like a tax levy, a majority affirmative vote's necessary for passage for the referendum. And what is our board's role? It's very similar. We accept it, but we check the sufficiency and the validity of the actual petition signatures. They also look facially, but as you can imagine, our board does not have the information at hand on what is on the petition as far as if it matches what the township trustees passed. But our board will go ahead and take it on its face and check the signatures. But if there's something that they notice, they may or may not certify it. We prepare the ballot language for referendum. We conduct the elections, and our board will certify the results unless, again, there's a challenge filed with our Board of Elections. At that time, if there is a challenge filed, then our board will have to take up and listen to witnesses and look at the face of the petition at that point. As far as protest, and I'm sorry for the people on the Zoom call that I am talking to the folks here and I forget to advance my slides, so I apologize for that. Various statutes are provided for protest. There's candidates can ask for reconsideration hearing, as I stated. Our board earlier, I mentioned that our board, is a quasi-judicial board and that they reign over the hearings, and their decision is final for the challenge that's here. And once the board makes that decision, the only avenue for someone who doesn't agree with our board is to take that to the Supreme Court. And Peg Watkins had mentioned, member Watkins had mentioned about chargebacks. A lot of people don't realize this at all. Is that, people will say, well, who pays for the elections? Or if you put on a special elections, well, that is the entity that puts on the election. They have to pay, like for instance, for the May elections, Powell City has chose to do a special election and they'll be paying the full amount of that election. And I've listed here a few things that gets charged back. Of course, we have poll workers, polling location rentals, the ballots, the delivery of equipment, advertising, staff overtime, and seasonal staff. And that pretty much wraps up my part. I have listed here, and it's in your packet resources. As I mentioned before, I would encourage you to study. You can go to the Secretary of State and look up there's a candidate portal on the state and also on our website. And I think there's a lot of useful information for you. And I just want to say thank you. And one last thing, we are here to help you. Myself and the entire staff here, you call us, we're open every day, and we will take your call and we will answer any questions you may have. Thank you so much and good luck.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like to introduce Jeremy Austin. He's one of our managers here, and he's going to walk you through the petition process. Jeremy?
Good afternoon. I can't hope to be as riveting as Carla was, but I hope you do indulge me in a few moments of personal privilege. First of all, Mr. Bousman, before you leave, he's walking the door right now. I thought what he said was beautiful, and I want to say that when my first child was born, the doctor handed my baby to my wife, and the doctor said to me, she's going to take care of the baby and you take care of her. And as Carla has spoken glowingly about the board members and how they support us, I do want to say something about Carla. She is, I consider it a pleasure to work under you every day. The knowledge, the commitment, the integrity is a joy to see and refreshing to see in government. So thank you. That being said, I'm going to go over today filing, circulation of petitions, and just petitions in general. I want to discuss first the benefits. I don't know whether you can hear me now. The benefits of getting your petitions at the BOE. And I do want to say immediately following this, candidate school will be over in the office. If you do want to pull petitions today or anytime during the week, you can come to our office, and we have a bipartisan team composed of a Democrat and a Republican that will assist you through the entire process. But I'm getting a little ahead of myself. If you do come to the BOE, Board of Elections, you will get your questions answered at the beginning of your pursuit rather than midway through or at the end and find out that you didn't know something that you should have. You'll receive handouts, candidate guide, voter registrations, and the like, assistance navigating our database, bipartisan assistance and guidance, as I've already stated. And you'll get to use the printer here in the office that will print your petitions double-sided, which is, as you'll find out later, a very important stipulation for submitting your petitions. Most importantly, the candidates who use our services and our portal have a very high success rate at making it to the ballot, and the board and our office are very happy and pride ourselves on that fact. What you need to know, and what we will go over with you upon your visit to the office, is that a ballot signer must be registered within the district of the candidate. I think Deputy Director Sadie may have said that earlier. I'm not sure. Who knows that? No person can sign for another person. An exception is an attorney in fact form. This does not, an attorney in fact is not a power of attorney. Some people conflate that, and that is not so. We do have a specific form for people who want other people to sign for them. A signer's signature must resemble that voter's signature on the Board of Elections file. Signers must use a registered residential address. A P.O. box is not a valid address. Signers must include a date when signing. And I'll have an image of the part petition up here later on where you can see the columns that I'm talking about. Voters may sign petitions for more than one candidate for the same office, the exception being the Delaware City Council. And the reason being is because that is spelled out in the charters. A candidate may not sign their own petition. A signer's qualifications are determined as of the date the petition is filed. And simply what that means is if you are a candidate and you have circulated your petitions, you don't want to hold those to the point where some of the people who may have signed may have moved or something like that, because that will obviously not be a valid signer. Circulators may draw a line through any signature prior to filing that they do not want included. This is a few days ago when I did this PowerPoint, and so our website doesn't look exactly like this, but the buttons are still primarily the same. when you visit our website and should you wish to peruse it and work through it, you're going to go and click on the candidate portal. You're going to click on nominating petition. I'm sorry, I don't have my glasses on. It's a little blurry, I'm sorry. A statement of candidacy, I'm sorry. When you, and if you want to file, we're going to go through the candidate petition module, which is what Chairman Helvey was speaking about earlier. I do believe it was Chairman Helvey. This is the module that is unique to our county that the board members, in an effort to get greater access to the ballot, wanted this module to be used so that it's more uniform for the candidates. And so you're going to work through, you're going to fill out the various sections. It's going to ask you for the petition validation guidelines. And by the way, for the Zoomers here, you can go online, you can look at this on our website. It's going to ask you to check certain boxes. You as the person running for office have the onus, the responsibility is yours to go through and make sure that you are knowledgeable and abreast of all of the circumstances and conditions necessary for you to make office or make the ballot, I should say. This is just more of the module you're going to go through. At the bottom, you're going to print a petition that looks like this. I'm being as terse as I can in the interest of time. This is what the actual petition will look like. We will give you, we will print these out on our printer, and it's going to be double-sided. I'll get to that point in a moment. Why they must be affixed. This is the prescribed petition form. The statement of candidacy must be completed prior to circulating the petition so that the voters who sign the petition know who they are signing for. This committee is the 5-person committee is a committee of people decided by the candidate who would replace the candidate in the event that the candidate cannot make it to the ballot for whatever reason. We'll give you a little handout on that when we hand out the packet. The nominating petition on each part petition must be completed prior to circulating the petition. Of course, except for the circulated statement, which must be completed after the signatures are collected, the petitions automatically fill with the candidate's information and is printed double-sided. Remember, we're going to have you make sure that you sign each part petition before you leave. You'll be amazed to know that some people do hand in those part petitions with that section not signed. This is the circulated statement and attestation that the circulator must sign prior to filing, that lets us know that the candidate witnessed all of the signatures. The candidate may be a circulator and must be at least 18 years old. Not required to be an Ohio elector or resident except in the primary. Must witness all signatures. Again, that's what the attestation is attesting to, that the circulator did in fact witness every person sign the petition. Must not sign the petition they're circulating. Must only be one circulator per part petition. Must include the correct number of signatures witnessed, and failure to do so will invalidate the part petition. Signs and completes the circulator statement. Again, we're going to go through that. If you are a candidate, you want to come to the office, we're going to go through all of this again with you if you choose. In closing, during the filing process, staff may speak to general, non-specific questions. We cannot really speak to specific circumstances regarding your campaign or your part petition, or excuse me, your petition. But we are here to help you, and we will answer any questions possible. There can be no alterations to the petitions once filed. When you bring your part petitions to the office, I or whoever are trained to tell you that we have laminated copies of part petitions on the counter. You have the onus as the candidate to look through those the laminated sheet, find the petition that matches yours, and make sure and compare that the highlighted areas on the sample copy everything is filled in on your actual petition. I will give you time to do that, because once you give it to us, we may not give it back to you. We will not give it back to you. Samples of completed petitions are on office counter for review. I just said that. Only board members certify candidates or issues to the ballot upon the review and recommendation of staff. Potential candidates may utilize office public computer to check signatures and check the validity of any registered voter who may have signed their petition. I want to back up one. Only the board members certify candidates. We get often questions or calls where people want to know, was I certified to the ballot? Who determines that? How many signatures and all that? The board, after we as the staff give the board members a recommendation as to the validity of the number of signatures or the invalidity of the number of signatures. If it meets the minimum threshold, you will be recommended to the board, and they actually make the decision to put you on the ballot, not the staff. Again, you will have access to the candidate module, and after office has received petitions, additional parts cannot be filed. I think I've already said this. And only one petition can be filed at a time. If a candidate believes they fell short or discover an error after filing, they may withdraw and refile a completely new petition prior to the filing deadline. My name, number, and the office email address and my personal phone number are here if you have any questions regarding petitions, filing, or anything like that. Thank you. Oh, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, we do have a question.
Jeremy, I've got questions here from Zoom. The first one, are these forms needed for people wanting to run for school boards?
Yes.
Okay. And the second one, is there a recommended number of signatures to get over the minimum requirement to account for any signature that might be disqualified?
I think we want to get out. We want 3. What are you saying? 3 times. Oh, that's right. That's what it is on the form. There is a on every form. There is a minimum amount of signatures and a maximum, and I think the maximum is 3 times the minimum. So yes. Yes, sir.
Oh, yeah, just a moment. Jeremy did a great job. There's one thing I want to add that we've run into, not recently, but we've run into. You may have your own petition that you're circulating. Brother and sister may have one, or your kids may have one. When you come into file, that's it. There's one filing. So you may, we've had people come and say, here's my petition. When my kid gets off work, he's going to drop off his. That doesn't count. Once it goes across the counter, that's it. It's boxed in. So make sure that if you have friends circulating, that they give you the petitions back. The other thing that could be a complete disaster is someone gets 4 or 5 signatures and like, oh, I'm driving by the board, I'll go ahead and give it to them. Well, they give that to us. That is your only signatures that you have at that point. Make sure you get all those copies back and nobody files before you do, that you have them all and that someone just doesn't drop off a half-complete petition. That's just, could be really sad. So that's the only thing I wanted to add.
Hello, I'm Anthony Sadie, Deputy Director. Before I start, I just wanted to say, Carla said, I echo all the wonderful things that she had to say about our board. They're truly great to work with, and same thing for Jeremy. I love working with Carla. She's taught me so much with all of her experience. But I just wanted to say, I think I do a pretty good job too. So, but no, seriously, all of our staff, the staff, even if they're not here in this room, everybody had a part in putting this thing on today. And even beyond that, I just want to thank the communications team, Marissa and Jane, communications director, and their new assistant, Heather. We wouldn't be able to do all of this stuff for the Zoom people out there if it wasn't for their help as well. So thank you guys very much. So I'm going to talk to you about navigating the candidate portal. It again is, as Jeremy showed you, it's the same place where you find the nominating petition on our website. There's different other sections of our website that you can find useful. There's the nominating petition that Jeremy talked about and the statement of candidacy there in the center. You can search for campaign finance filings that have been filed with us at the Secretary of State site. Shirley and Jenny will talk about this a little bit more in depth. But this, I'm gonna be honest with you, this button right here is for this new Secretary of State module. Susie's not here still, so I think I can say this, but it's not a complete database of all of our campaign finance filings. It's still new with the Secretary of State, so I'm sure we'll get there eventually, but it is not a complete database. That will be in 2 steps from now. The election calendar is all of the dates, including different filing deadlines, whether it be campaign finance filing deadlines, petition filing deadlines, everything related to elections is on this calendar. This is the campaign finance filings that have been filed directly with us at our office. This will be a complete database of all of the filings related to campaign finance reports. Absentee reports is where you can generate PDF reports, labels, graphs, absentee data for each election. Voter lists generates PDF reports, spreadsheets, and labels for all of Delaware County's registered voters. Street report listings is the PDF report or spreadsheet of all the street listings in Delaware County. The state candidates file online button that will again redirect you to the Secretary of State's website. That is not for local candidates, that is for people that file directly with the Secretary of State's office. And there's the new online portal created by the Secretary of State for local campaigns and committees to file online. That is a new portal. That's what I was referring to. All of the things that are filed here, they automatically end up in this section, but we also put them in our database as well. To generate voter lists, I'll go through it quickly. First, you just choose from whether you want labels, PDF report, or a CSV file in Excel to easily view and sort the data. You can filter out by voters who voted in a particular election, but I would just recommend leaving no election filter to include all voters. Party affiliation, again, the elections this year at least are nonpartisan, so I would recommend to include all of those. You can also filter to show voters in a range of particular precincts or districts. So that's something that would be useful if you're running for a certain township office or village office. You can just select filter on that district. So you're only seeing voters who would be able to sign your petition. Then you can choose how it can get generated. Walking list is one of the selections here. If you plan on going door to door, a walking list will make it easy to, it'll organize the voters by houses. So you'll be able to easily see on the single side of the street and just go down that side of the street and knock on all the doors that you can. And then again, you can ask if you wanted to include mailing addresses, if you wanted to send out a mailer of some sort. Obviously, you know, if a voter uses a PO box to get their mail as opposed to the registered voter address, so that could be useful for that. And then you can just click to generate the list. This is how it will come out in a CSV file. We get records requests all the time, and typically the way I respond to them, I don't do this for them, but this is where I get all the reports and for our personal use. So I will just give the records requests step-by-step directions on how for them to find it themselves, and then we don't get requests in the future. They just know how to do it. So again, the list though can be a little overwhelming with so many columns. You have the name of the voter. This is the county ID and the Secretary of State assigned ID. You have the voter's address, and this is their address that they're registered at. This is their mailing address in these columns here. Reg date is the date that they registered. Birth year is the year that they were born. Last time, voter update and voter stat, that is the last time that they had voter activity with us. Voter activity being voting in an election, updating their registration, whether it even be at the BMV or even signing a petition will count as voter activity. And status is whether or not they're an active voter, you know that they continue to vote, or their registration's relatively recent. Party affiliation, if they've voted in a primary, we would have their party affiliation, the last year that they voted, their precinct name, precinct ID, and then there's a bunch of columns, and that's just all of the election history that we keep in our electronic voter registration database. You can see the date of the election and the type at the top of each column. And then there's a little key that will tell you if it's a lowercase letter, that means that voter voted absentee in that election. Uppercase, it is election day ballot, and the party will be whichever letter it is, R or D for Republican or Democrat in a primary. That's the ballot that they pulled in that primary. X would be a nonpartisan ballot or a general election ballot. Absentee reports is useful if you're hunting down people and trying to get them to vote early and wanted to see who has voted early already, who's requested a ballot, who you need to get ballot requests out to. Again, it's very similar to the voter reports list. You'll select the election, the most recent election, or the one that you're going to be running in or you want to campaign for. Again, you can choose which kind of file you want, whether it be CSV or PDF. Check the type of absentee requested. I would just leave them all checked. It's just in office, whether by mail. Nursing homes, I would just leave them all checked. Again, which parties to include if you only want to look for a certain type of ballot pulled. This is the party that the voters are registered as, not necessarily the ballot style that was requested. Choose whether or not to filter on a date range on when we would have received that voter's application for an absentee ballot. Filter on a district if you are running for a specific district or only want to focus on your precinct or neighborhood if you're on central committee. And then you can choose sorting options, whether it be alphabetical or by precinct and alphabetical, and then click there to generate the reports. This section of our website begins updating about 46 days before each election. That's when the first ballots go out for the military and overseas civilians, and it will update typically between 4 and 5 o'clock p.m. And again, to read the absentee reports CSV files, these codes are even more, these headers were even less helpful. AV sent date would be the date that the absentee ballot was sent. AV sent method would be how it was sent. There's mail, over the counter means they came here and voted in person, hand carry, they took a ballot home from the BOE, or email. Military and overseas civilians have the option to have their ballot emailed to them, and then they can physically mail that ballot back to us. So that's what the email means. Date and the AV receive date and AV receive method would be the date and method the voted absentee ballot was received by us. So that means that they've already returned that ballot and we have it. AV app type would be the type of application that the voter used to request a ballot, whether it be by mail or in office, which would be in-person vote center. Withdrawn means that application was either invalid or withdrawn at the voter's request. So we get a lot of records requests for saying, are you getting a lot of invalid applications? What are you doing to fix the invalid applications? You can actually just go online and see everybody who sent in an invalid application and figure out why, whether it be a signature mismatch, missing ID, missing birthday, things like that. Then you had the precinct ID, precinct name, which is easy, and the AV app date was the date the absentee application was received by the Board of Elections. Also, on our website, we have resources and data. You can take a look at different questions and issues. There's one for each district in our county where we're the most populous, and it's got a history dating back pretty far of whether a question or issue passed or failed, the votes for and against. And if you click on these little links here, it actually has the ballot language for each issue that was on the ballot. Election results and voter turnout. On here, an interesting report of that you can look at would be the key canvas. And this is to look at specifically how individual precincts voted for each race. So if you wanted to go and look at just your district, you can go and look at each specific precinct and see what the voter turnout was like and how that precinct voted for each individual race. It's a very long report, but so you can really nail down exactly how your constituents voted in your area. If anybody has any questions, Jane, we have a question on Zoom.
We do. Is there a way to find out if anyone else is running for the office you are interested in?
No, there really isn't. People that come into the office and file petitions with us, we go over or take out petitions with us. We go over a list, and we ask the people that we go over it with for their name and information and to sign, just to kind of say that we went over it. That's completely optional, though. They don't have to fill that out. It is a public record, so they could always request, that. However, there's nothing stopping anybody from going online, printing out their own petition and filing it themselves. And we have no idea until they come in and file with us. Once they do file with us, someone could do a records request for anybody that's filed up until that date. But after the certification deadline, we will put up online all of the candidates that are running at that point. That's it. Great. Next, I will turn it over to Jenny Wiest and Shirley Benehoff, and they will talk to you about campaign finance.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here, whether you're here in person or online. Thank you for joining us. I'm Jenny Wiest.
I'm Shirley Benehoff, and we're here to help you better understand campaign finance and some of the changes brought about by an online world.
So as you can see on the slide, there are several types of candidates, and we'll touch on them today briefly.
The first one is the small dollar activity. It requires a designation of treasurer, a separate bank account. The candidate spends or receives $500 or less. Only the cover page is needed. You're required only to file a post report. And when filing a post, the committee must simultaneously terminate, and you must have a zero balance to terminate.
Next, we have the out-of-pocket candidate. If you intend to self-fund your campaign, you still need to file with the Board of Elections. It is, however, a much more simple process. You will file a designation of treasurer form, and all transactions would be reported as in-kind received using Form 31J1. So just to be clear, if you end up receiving money from others, you are no longer an out-of-pocket candidate.
The next one is the local candidate waiver. It's only available to elected municipal offices with a compensation of less than $5,000 a year. Township trustees, fiscal officers, local boards of education, and local educational service center seats. You must file a designation of treasurer. You cannot accept more than $2,000 in contributions or make more than $2,000 in expenditures. You cannot accept more than $100 for any one person. The waiver expires at the end of the election year, and the committee must terminate or begin filing reports. And the other thing about this is the timing is important. You only have 10 days after your petition has been filed in order to tell us that this is how you want to file with us.
The next one is the campaign committee candidate. A designation of treasurer form is required. You need to set up a separate bank account with the name of the committee. Keep track of everything received and everything spent. File the appropriate reports at the appropriate time. And if your committee has money left when filing the post-election report, the candidate must continue to file annual and semi-annual reports. To terminate, the committee must have a zero account balance.
Okay, the next thing, we're just going to get started. So you must file your designation of treasurer before accepting or any contributions or making any expenditures. Depending on which type of committee fits your circumstances, you may need to choose a treasurer. Then you file your designation of treasurer with us at the Board of Elections. You may want to keep your committee name somewhat generic, such as Friends of Jeremy Austin. This would allow a candidate to run for another office without having to open a new bank account. Candidates may only have one open campaign finance account at a time. And if you decide to seek election for another office, you need to update your designation of treasurer to reflect the new office. We suggest that the candidate also be designated as a deputy treasurer because the treasurer and the deputy treasurer are the only two that are able to sign for the report. And as of January of this year, you may now file online.
So to use the new online reporting that Anthony referred to earlier, you will first access our website. So that's vote.delawareCountyOhio.gov. That middle section is all one word, no spaces. Select the candidate portal. Select the local committee file online. Create a user file, or a user profile, and then the designation of treasurer form. Follow the instructions completely and from the online learning center that you'll see. And each person is required to have a separate login. The designation of treasurer is not submitted to the board for filing until all parties have electronically signed to acknowledge their appointment. Reports cannot be audited until the designation of treasurer has been accepted by the Board of Elections. So just to be clear, if you choose to file online, all parties mentioned on the designation of treasurer form must create an account and follow the steps in the email you'll receive from the Secretary of State's office to accept your responsibilities to the committee. We are not notified of your committee's filing of the designation of treasurer until all of these steps have been completed, and you cannot file an online report until this process has been successfully completed.
Okay, the next thing you need to do is set up your bank accounts. They must be separate from any personal or business accounts that you have. All contributions received and deposited and all expenses paid from this account must be disclosed. A federal ID number may be required by your bank, and we've included a form, some information in there to help you understand what that process is. Debit and credit cards are acceptable, but beware of their filing requirements.
Okay, so if you plan to use debit or credit cards, they should belong to the committee. Please understand that using a personal credit card or debit card can complicate the reporting process. It may require that you provide us with your personal credit card or bank statements. Along with your checking account, you may want to consider adding a debit and/or credit card. For expenditures, you will also need to show that the committee has paid off the credit card balance.
Okay, for the upcoming election, the pre-general is due on October 21st of 2021, and it discloses activity through October 13th, and the post-general is due December 10th to disclose activity through December 3rd. You must file a pre-election report if you have $1,000 in contributions or expenditures, including in kind. And any new loans that you receive, that value is also included in there. If a candidate or issue appears on the ballot, the committee may need to file a pre-general, but you must file a post. If you're not on the ballot, you'll need to file an annual report and possibly a semi-annual. And we will send out a reminder to file letter on October 8th for the pre, and one on November 30th for the post this fall.
Okay, for every filing, you will need to complete a cover page. That's the Form 30A. We have created a fictitious campaign committee with our very own Jeremy Austin running for City Council in Delaware, and we've provided you with a set of examples of forms that you would be using. Please make sure to fill out forms completely, and please double check your math. If you can mail in your reports, you can bring them to us in person or file online. All pages must be originals, and remember to sign the cover page.
Okay, this is just a basic outline of the campaign finance report and the forms that are used. When printing out your own forms, we suggest that you print out the instructions on the back. That combined with the campaign finance handbook should answer most or all of your questions. And that's it for that.
Okay. Contributions are reported on Form 31A. Please fill out all the fields. If you don't, then we will contact you to follow up on that. Remember that a contribution comes from only one person, so not from a couple, not Mr. and Mrs., not family members. It's attributed to one person. Any contribution from an LLC or a partnership requires the name of the individual making the contribution. If more than one person is contributing, then each person, that figure needs to be broken out with the name and what each person is contributing, the amount. You may not accept more than $100 in cash from any individual per election. You also cannot accept contributions from corporations. If you make a loan to yourself, it is reported on Other Income Form 31A2. And you will also complete a statement of loans received, which is Form 31C, with every report until the loan is either paid off or forgiven. Reporting the fees for online contributions can be a bit of a headache. Before you choose an online platform for contributions, please confirm that the platform is going to provide you with a means of getting the adequate data for reporting, because you will need to supply backup documentation for expenditures. Remember to report the full intended value of a contribution and not the figure after the online platform has assessed a fee. So that would be reported as an expenditure, the fee.
The next are in-kind contributions. This is anything of value other than money that's used to influence an election. Stamps, copies, food for a fundraiser, those are all ones that are most common. A candidate must be aware of any in-kind contribution that is being made to them. If they are not aware, the contribution is considered an independent expenditure, and that needs to be reported by the person that made it, not by the committee.
For expenditures, they're reported on Form 31B. Again, please fill out all the fields completely.
Make copies of everything. It's going to make things much easier for you when it's time to do your reporting. We realize that during a campaign, you're not focusing probably on campaign finance, but you will really be happy that you kept records when it is time to file. So just make copies of everything, please.
Okay, expense verification. This is where we kind of lose some of you. We have to have a documentation of every expenditure over $25, a copy of a canceled check front and back, or a receipt that is marked paid by the vendor, or both accepted. You may use debit cards for purchases as long as your bank statement provides the required information of the name of payee, the date of the expenditure, and the amount of the expenditure. And the next thing is very important. Please make a note of this. If you use an online platform for contributions, be sure to report the fees as they appear on your statement. That is the only way that we are able to match the fees up with your documentation. Most of these companies aggregate the fees, therefore, that's really the only way that we can use that.
For credit cards, if you're using a committee-owned credit card, you must show a copy of the statement itemizing the expenditures and show that the committee paid the credit card balance. If using a personal debit or credit card, it should be reported as a reimbursement. I would repeat this. If you make a purchase using a personal debit or credit card, report it as the expenditure as a reimbursement. Otherwise, it can be very difficult to provide the verification that we will require. Using electronic fund transfers to pay an expenditure made on a personal credit card makes documentation even more challenging. So we really discourage you from doing that.
Okay, disclaimers. There's always a lot of questions about disclaimers. It's the portion of the political message that identifies the name of the entity that paid for the item. We've provided you with a handout in your packet that should answer most of your questions about disclaimers. The name and address of the treasurer is no longer needed, but if you are using reusing signs and that, you do have to cover any information that's inaccurate that's on those signs. Another word on the campaign materials, if you've been appointed to your office, you may not use the words re-elect on your materials. You can use keep or retain, just not re-elect.
Okay, so the audit process. We are the auditing authority. We operate as a bipartisan team. We will examine all reports to ensure that they meet all of the requirements. We will communicate with you via phone, email, or in writing to inform you of any missing or incorrect information on your report. And remember, we're here to help you. Failure to respond can ultimately prompt a referral to our board and then onto the Ohio Election Commission, but that's very rare. Just keep the dialogue open.
Okay, when your campaign is over, you may want to terminate your account. In order to do that, you have to have a zero balance, no outstanding debts, no outstanding loans. You want to make sure you mark the termination box. And if you do not terminate, you must continue to file an annual report.
So this slide lists some of the resources available for campaign finance. The most helpful source of information is something Shirley mentioned earlier. On the back of each of the forms that are generated by the Secretary of State, there's a complete set of instructions that's relevant to that form. So that can be a very useful source of information for you. And then in conjunction with the Campaign Finance Handbook. Both of these are found on the Secretary of State's website under the Campaign Finance tab. And of course, we're always here to help. So please don't hesitate to contact us.
We just have the top 10 common errors. The first one is blank fields. Make sure you fill out the forms completely. you cannot receive a contribution from a corporation. You can take money from LLCs, which needs to be attributed to a person within the LLC, but no money from contributions. Math errors, that's a big one. Please check your math. It just saves you a lot of time. Receive cash contribution greater than $100. Can't do that. And not filling out the designation of treasurer process completely when you're doing it electronically. You've got to make sure that when they send you that email that you follow it all the way to the end, or we don't even know about it. So
then number 6 is improper records and reporting of cash contributions under $25. That's also known as passing the hat. Failure to bring forward the correct balance from a previous report. A failure to update a designation of treasurer form. Use of cash for expenditures or ATM withdrawals. No. And incomplete documentation of expenditures. So regarding number 6, keep in mind that even though you're not required to document the contributor's information on our reports, if the contribution is under $25 and was given at a particular fundraiser, you must still keep those records and you must be able to produce those records if you are asked to do so. So that's an important distinction. We won't ask them of you, but you should have them. If you are considering holding a raffle for a fundraiser, please consult the Campaign Finance Handbook, which has been created by the Ohio Secretary of State's office. You can acquaint yourself with the documentation requirements and the rules pertaining to an endeavor like that. And again, the use of cash for any expenditure is prohibited.
okay, make sure you please take a look at the packets that we've given you. They contain examples as well as additional information that may be useful. The most important message we want to leave you is to not be intimidated by campaign finance. We know that this isn't your primary thing here, that you really just want to win your election. We're here to help you, work with you, answer any questions you may have. Referrals to the Election Commission are rare and they never happen as long as you are working with us to resolve any of reporting issue you may have. And thanks again for attending.